The Hangout on air is live. Hi and welcome. We decided to do a Hangout and talk about shooting in the winter. It's something I love to do. The people in the room love to do it as well, and a couple of them have even been on trips with me last winter when we had record temperatures and record snowfall. So if you're watching, welcome. I'm keeping an eye on the event page, and if you want to ask questions or chat, just post that right below the video on the event page. That would be great. If you can't see the event page while the video is playing, just have two screens open and just minimize them a bit so that you can see the comments on the event page. And that would work out really well. So just to start with, I'm just going to do a really quick introduction across. Just give me your name, where you're from, and your level of winter love, whether it's a 0 or a 10. So I'll start with you, Jay. Don't forget to unmute.
My love of winter is probably a -10 when it comes to being cold. I have low blood circulation and I feel it in my extremities. But by the end of the show, you'll find out why I'm anxious to get back out there.
Good. Yeah. And Julie, hi. Don't forget to unmute.
Hi. I am not a real huge fan of winter in general, but there are some amazing opportunities that you can find in winter, and I have gone on a couple things. I've done an overnight shoot up in the mountains with Jake and a bunch of other Johnson and a bunch of other group people a couple years ago in Seattle, and I went out with Ron last year. And so really, in general, my level of enjoyment in the winter is not very high. But I'm glad we're doing this hangout because you can talk about how to get prepared so that it's not so difficult for you.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we had such a memorable trip last year. And I'll probably have a couple of images from one or all of the trips. I'm not sure what I have loaded up, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Now, Robert, we haven't been on a trip. We've been on photo walks together, but we haven't been on a winter trip together. But just let me know kind of where you're located, and you know, you have a higher level of experience in the winter. So
yeah, I'm pretty much like a four-season person, outdoor person, camp, hike a lot. I guess in the past was an avid snowboarder, so I'm pretty comfortable out in just about anything. I've gone on a couple of winter outings with the local photography club where it's been -30 up north of Sudbury. So yeah, you get used to dealing with the cold very quickly when you're in those conditions.
yeah, and you learn really quickly that you know, the gear that you bring, and I'm not talking about camera gear so much in this particular talk, but I want to talk more about the clothing we bring, because in our part of the world, you could go out at 4 in the morning to get somewhere for the sunrise, and it could be 25 below, and then by 11 o'clock, it can be like +2 or 3. I mean, you can have huge swings in temperature some days, and if you're not properly dressed and prepared for that swing in temperature, or in the difference between snow, wind, rain, or sun, it can get really miserable really fast, and it doesn't have to. And this is the thing that I've discovered about winter, is it's become one of my favorite seasons, and I never thought I would say that, because of the opportunities it provides for really dramatic photography. And so before I talk about gear specifically, I just want to do just a quick share of some images that were captured on the Bruce Peninsula or close to home, where I'm going to be doing a trip I usually do a January one, a February one, and then a group one in March. So I just wanted to show some pictures that we've gotten over the last year or two, and just make a little bit of quick commentary. So I don't want to take too long doing that, but let me just do a bit of a slideshow screen share here on screen too. And I'll present to everyone there so it doesn't bounce around. Feel free to ask any questions, you guys in the room here, if you have any. But this is kind of an iconic image, one of my signature images that I got on one of the trips that was really life-changing for me. One of the things I discovered on this trip in particular was how much color there can be if you shoot at the right time and in the right conditions. Snow is not white. Snow is whatever colors are in the sky or around you. And you can use post-processing to accentuate that. I didn't add any colors that weren't already there, although I make no apology for emphasizing an image or using light painting techniques in Photoshop to emphasize. And so I worked with what was originally there, but just created a more dramatic impression of what I saw at the time. This one here goes the other way. It's almost monochromatic in that there's really only, well, duochromatic, blues, grays, and whites. But using wide angle and dramatic lines, you create some pretty interesting things. What I want to point out that last year, Lake Huron, well, pretty much all of the Great Lakes froze solid for the first time in many, many, many years. And this is where I'm standing on Lake Huron, and what you're seeing in the background is not a land mass. It is an ice mass from wave action before what I'm standing on froze over. And so this was actually just ice pushed up. And we're about 1 kilometer away from shore now, out on Lake Huron. And I'm pretty sure my car keys are probably right below me. I lost them there, and that's a long story. But I ended up having to spend a couple more days up there because, as it turns out, Purolator couldn't get to us because of the conditions. So I had an extended holiday. But yeah, that was fun. So again, using wide angle and using what I call layering to create dramatic effect. So foreground, middle ground, and background. This is very early morning. The sun's just coming up. And when you expose for snow, you know, on a trip, and I don't want to get too much into technical details about this because we're talking about clothing and being prepared, but when you expose for snow, if there was one lesson I could pass on to people, that is to shoot and keep your snow on your histogram. Don't let the whites blow out. And if you use a histogram, just look at your histogram and look to the right to make sure that all your whites aren't leaving the page and they're not too far away from the right corner. And if you're not sure what that is, look up your histogram in snow. It's a great study to understand how to get a great image without having to do too much bracketing. So here again, early in the morning, the snow and ice are taking on two strong dominant colors. One is the color of the sky from the sun, and around the corner of the cliff on the right here, it's very bluish because it's still pretty much nighttime. The sun's just coming up and barely peeking around. So we get this beautiful complement of the blue-violet, and then this kind of, I don't know what this is, like an aqua blue against the violet pinkish sky. I shoot a lot in vertical format, and I love it. And again, you can see strong foreground, middle ground, and background as a compositional element. And here again, one of the great things about shooting in the winter and in the snow is that as much as morning and sunset and sunrise are dramatic, there's no best time to shoot. Whereas if you're shooting a regular landscape in the middle of the day, it can be stark and very unattractive. Snow scenes can be very dramatic even in the middle of the day, and this is an example of that happening. And here again, early morning, the sun created a strong ray. It was about 25 below this morning, in the morning I shot this. And I took Photoshop. This foreground is not reality. This is an artistic interpretation. But I just felt there was something very spiritual about that morning, so I took the image into Photoshop and I manipulated it to be that spiritual look or effect that I was feeling that morning. When it's that cold, like 25 below, ice crystals in the air create very dramatic effects. Like this kind of ice bow that you see here, this bowing of the mist, is actually in the original image, even though I did some flipping. If I showed you the original, it goes across the whole image. It's really cool. Things you don't get to see in regular circumstances. This particular view is the one, Julie and Jay, you might remember coming out of the forest the first time and stopping at a place. This was the place in February, not in March, but in February where I stopped. And the sun hadn't peaked the horizon yet, and you can actually see one of the stars in the horizon in a vapor trail from a from a fire or a chimney or something, which is really cool. And so in processing this, I decided not to process for pure white because it was still quite dark. So I processed for the sky. Not everything in snow is going to be pure white or blue or black, or you're going to have colors in there, and you make your choice in processing. Julie, this was when you were there. Remember the sun bow that we had from the cold temperatures and the grotto that we were walking along?
Yeah, I remember that.
And so this was one of those times you were there. But you can see that the wave action, if I can zoom in on this, I can't get close enough, but the wave action all the way up, some winters is all the way up to the top, where there's these ice forms, fingers of ice from the waves on Georgian Bay. But strangely, last year Georgian Bay froze solid, like I said, and created or left us with all the remnants of the wave action, but we're walking right on the ice. It was very, very cool. And this one has a story to it. This one was shot, Jeff Moreau will remember this one. This is the moment I got frostbite. And it was below -25, I'm sure of it. It was the first night we got there, Jeff and I, in January last year. And if I just close out, and I'll go to another image, and I want to show you what can happen. It is the next image, actually. My camera was growing frost. This just happened in 10-minute time period after having the camera out. It started growing frost when it dropped below -25. And this tree that you see over here, if I go back, if I can go back, let me see, go backwards. That tree is this tree right here in that image, right there. And if you look on the viewfinder, you'll see a shiny spot. That's where my nose touched it when it was below -25. And I got to tell you, frostbite it feels like something bit me. It hurt.
Yeah.
And it was minor. My nose blistered and peeled in a few days. But it's something you want to be aware of, I'll tell you. At -25, I'll start to get into a little bit about equipment. But by -20, your batteries begin to dramatically lose their ability to hold a charge. And you want to have lots of spare batteries, or wrap a pocket warmer around your battery side with an elastic or whatever. Comes in handy. Jeff Moreau was shooting with his new Sony A7 and A7R, I believe. Beautiful cameras. I love them. They are fantastic. But he did consume a lot more battery than I did with the Sonys because they're running an electronic viewfinder and a full-time LED screen. Oh, sorry. And I just wanted to say that after Jeff and I left last year, this was the warning that came from the peninsula. It said, watch out, dangerous blizzard conditions, becoming less severe by Wednesday, but they're dangerous snow squalls, -25 to 35. 50 centimeters of snow could be expected, and this is a life-threatening situation for any side outside for any duration or stranded in a vehicle. I'm not saying that to brag or impress you. I'm saying that because you need to be aware when you're going away of the reality of the conditions you're going into. And so this is kind of going to break me into that discussion about what to bring with you and what to prepare for. I just wanted to say that this particular shot was shot moments after the shot, Julie, you took, I think, from the same area. But no, you weren't in, that was Jeff. You took the shot from this spot and the lake was frozen.
Was frozen, yeah.
Yeah, so completely different view.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to break on the screen share for a second. There we go. Just looking at a couple messages that came through. So, and I want to go back to look at the thing. Yeah, you guys see the video. I'm just checking on. Yeah, if you're only seeing the video, what I'd recommended is to open two windows so you can see the video and the comments, unless it only opens in full screen, and then they've messed it up for me. And I didn't start this as a Q&A. So if you're watching and you're not able to ask those questions, maybe you can pop over to the event page, which I am monitoring, and I'll answer questions. So aside from that, I want to talk about being prepared. And I look at going out in the winter like scuba diving. Always bring a buddy. And I say that, and even if you're not that far from home, I say that because in the conditions we're in, if you were to have an accident, if something was to go wrong, the only way to get to you is through air ambulance, through helicopter. There are no paved roads to these places, and the further out you hike, the more a very minor accident could become a major problem. And so bring a buddy and go, and always make sure you know the forecast coming. Keep an eye on the Environment Canada forecast and keep updated. So James, you said, and I just want to ask you, before I go into talking specifically about clothing and gear, this will be the segue into the clothing and gear. You said that your love of winter is about a -10. What was your enjoyment level of the trip that we took last March, and what do you think was the reason for that?
German level is probably 11, 12, because I've been up to the Bruce many times. I've been up there a few times in the winter on car trips, which are totally different than hiking in. And we got out and got to enjoy without worrying about the cold. And it was due to being prepared, having the right clothing, having a good guide. And we went from -20, I say it was our coldest, not like you and Jeff, and up to probably just above 0
Yeah.
days.
And so that's an example of the extreme swings. So when we hiked across the lake, I think it started out at -17. I think I recall that being the temperature when we began that day. And how cold were you when we hiked across the lake?
You were helping me unzip about halfway. I was overheating. I had dressed in layers, so it wasn't a big problem. I just had to stop for a moment, and I had to open up my jacket and open up some vents on the coat and take off one of the hats.
Yeah.
And I was fine again. We continued on, no problems. Because I was wearing polyester as a base layer, the sweat didn't become a problem. It didn't freeze up against my skin. But we're all getting polyester versus cotton, I'm sure.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. And Julie, what about? I'll come to you because you've been on one of the trips with me specifically. Mm-hmm. What about your comfort level when you first started? You haven't done a lot of snowshoeing, and we started out fairly light, but then the next morning we did take that hike out to Cyprus. How would you portray your experience?
I really enjoyed it. It was a huge challenge though as well. Something to keep in mind is that if you are going to be doing a big hike to get to the beautiful places that you want to potentially be, it's like running in the sand. You've got so much more layers on if you're using, you're packing in so many more things just for safety and for warmth. And if you've got the snowshoes, then it just makes the hike with your boots and everything that much more difficult. So it's extremely physical. Yeah. So when you're moving, like when we were hiking across the lake, we got to the lake and I looked at it and just thought, wow, okay, this is going to be fun. But, like James said, once you get moving, even in the -17, you're physically putting out a lot of energy and getting warm. If you don't have those layers on, that could become a problem with overheating. But I really enjoyed it. It was a lot more physically challenging than I thought. But it's something that I don't do very often. I really enjoyed it. And I'll say again, and it's something that James said too, is that one of the most important things before any gear that you can take is going with somebody who knows what they're doing and somebody who knows the area. I mean, that's so paramount, because going into a place blindly when you can't really see what's underneath your feet, so you don't really know if you're on a crevice, or you don't know if you're really in the air and there's
Yeah.
just snowbank below
Tell
you.
me,
Yeah.
I know you had a bit of an experience. I asked you to follow me to get to this point where you're actually on the cover of my event, shooting from the place I wanted to bring you and show you a great view. And you walked up behind me and you discovered something about where you followed me from. Can you
Well,
share?
yeah. Well, first of all, getting up there was one thing, and I wasn't sure I could do it. I was watching Ron Superman ahead of me just do this big leap up, what it looked like a snowbank, and you did a couple hops and you're up there pretty easily. And I thought, okay, well, I'll give that a try. And I got up there and I grabbing on it, and as I'm walking, I'm looking at the things I'm grabbing, and I'm realizing that I'm grabbing onto trees, but I'm grabbing onto the tops of these trees. And I'm starting to realize how deep potentially the snow is. And I think at one point you turned and said, you know what, there's a crevice there, and there's a hole here, and your knowledge of the area was amazing, and just trying to realize that I was in that situation where, okay, I really don't know what's below me, and I am walking really literally at the tops of these trees. They might not be super tall, but it's kind of scary, but it was great. I'm glad I did. I'm glad I followed you up there. We got a couple good shots. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the physical aspect of going out in foul weather and having that gear on. Well, we had good weather. It wasn't foul. It was great weather. It was just cold at some points, and the snow was quite deep, especially last year. For anybody that wants to know what the snow was like, I'm gonna just do a screen share here of the snow last year. This is on Highway 6 on the way up to the peninsula where we were hiking. So this is it here. And yes, those snowbanks are 12 feet high. So you can well imagine that small trees could be buried under the snow quite easily. And they were. We were walking on the tops of trees as we went up the ledges of the side of the Bruce Peninsula National Park. And it is important to know where you're at. So I just wanted to share that. I want to move on, Robert, and you have different experience, and I'm going to get you to do a little bit of sharing, but I want to start by talking about, first of all, the extremities: footwear, handwear, and headwear, because you can really blow it on your body wear, but if your footwear, handwear, and headwear are right, it's quite tolerable. So I just thought maybe I'll come over to you and just ask you to share a little bit about that.
Okay. Do you want to start maybe on footwear?
It'd be a great place to start, because I tell the joke. I tell the joke to people. I'm like Lieutenant Dan on Forrest Gump. And if you recall, when Forrest Gump got into the Army, he met Lieutenant Dan. Lieutenant Dan went on and on and on about good socks, right? Good footwear. You got to take care of your feet. So that's kind of what I'm like. So go ahead.
So I guess I'll start with my boots. I'm a little overboard on the boots. I like a very heavy hiking boot, and these are Scarpa mountaineering boots. They're very stiff. They're almost like wearing a ski boot, but I like the stability they give me, especially in the ankles, and they're warm, extremely warm, and they have the ridges on them for crampons. They clip right on, so you're good that way. You don't have to worry about what's going to fit and what isn't. And so these I've had these for a number of years, and they've just been my go-to in the winter.
Yeah. Now, are they Gore-Tex lined, so they're waterproof as well as breathable, or are they just waterproof or not waterproof?
Yeah, they're Gore-Tex. So yeah, you can go through probably 3 or 4 inches of water with these too, with no problem.
Good. Yeah.
And I think too, when we're talking about socks, I wear 2 pairs of socks. I have like these very light liner socks that I wear underneath, and I'm a big proponent of smart wool socks as my main layer. So.
Yeah, and James brought that up last week about the smart. Did you say smart wool or smart socks, Jay, or what was that? Because you're allergic to wool, right?
I'm allergic to wool. So I was using the I also used a polyester thin liner sock so that it had the wicking effect for the moisture. And then I used the Mark's Work Warehouse brand, or Mark's now, Heat brand, and they're basically an extra thick poly blend sock that holds a lot of air and helps keep you warm. And that works really well.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna go there too because I I do everything. Um, I say that necessity is the mother of invention, and when you don't have a lot of finances, some years you gotta kind of make do. And so I discovered that a pair of poly dress socks is almost as effective as the more expensive socks that are designed as liners. And so here's a pair of just old poly dress socks that I use as the liner pair. And then again, I go with a reasonably priced. They're not over the top and they're not too cheap wool. I'm not allergic to wool, so I have different weights of wool. That's my medium weight wool sock. And then I combine that. If you are on a budget, they're not the most fashionable things. These, I got to tell you, they got to be 15 years old. And this is probably, I don't think I'm going to wear them this year. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll just go buy another pair. But they cost me about $40. They're waterproof up to here. They have a removable, replaceable liner. They draw strings to keep the snow out. They're not the most form-fitted for your feet. I wear orthotics, and these bother me. My left foot I have an issue with, and so when I wear these, I can't put an orthotic insole in them. And so that's one consideration. But they're very durable. They're rated to -40. They're about $40 here in Canada, in Canadian Tire, and they still sell them. See, got the little Canada sign on them. But if you're on a budget, for me, would be the minimum that you would want to go out in severe conditions with, especially if there's a mix between ice, snow, and water. And then I'm gonna go on one other thing about. I mentioned that we crossed a lake. I doubt this January, with the conditions we've had, I'd even go near a lake right yet. But when I cross a lake, I have these. I don't even know if you guys know I had these on me. I carry these. They're inside the sleeve of my coat, or they're inside my coat, or outside my coat, pardon me, and tucked into my pocket. But these are ice picks, and what happens if you poke down on the ice, if you were to fall through the ice and you poke down, there's a nail right there. And that's how you would get out of the ice, and at least one person on your team needs to have these. And I would never go on ice that I didn't know was probably close to 3 feet thick. I'm so paranoid. I would avoid it going on lakes, but when I know they're well frozen, I'll always have these with me if I go on a lake. And so that's about being prepared. If you're with a group and you're just not sure, you should have a rope, just like you're in kindergarten, and all walk holding on to that rope, so that if one person goes down, the rope is there and the others can help pull back out. And I don't mean to scare anybody, but you just want to be prepared. You just don't want to mess with the possibility of an accident, even though it's probably extremely unlikely it's ever going to happen. So I'm going to move from footwear. So footwear, one of the things I want to point out, Rob mentioned this, and mine have the clips too, but this is if you look at snow boots, some have this on the back, and that's to take the back strap of your snowshoes. And so that's why they have this little bump here. And if they don't have that bump, you want to make sure that your heel is angled back. Because if it's not, if it's angled straight, that strap is just going to inevitably come off. So yeah, let me highlight you there, Jay. So you can see on James's boot how there's a catch there or up here that a strap could get caught on James's boot there. All things you need to consider. So I'm going to move on to gloves, and James, I'm going to ask you, like, as far as gloves go, what did you find effective in keeping your hands? Because I know that you really are susceptible to cold.
Well, regardless of what kind of gloves you have, the secret weapon is the hot shots.
Yes.
Chemical heat packs, or there's electronic, and there's also some lighter fuel ones. Yep, that's them. Robert's got them.
Yeah,
And
just hold them up one more time. Yeah, good. Excellent. Go ahead.
and I started with again, Mark's is one of my favorite stores. They have a liner glove that even has the finger, pointy finger and the thumb with the treated for using on an iPhone.
That's a really good point, because when you're out there and you want to communicate on your phone and you're wearing gloves that don't have that special tip on the finger and thumb, you have to take your glove completely off to operate. So that's a good point.
So these ones here retail I think they were $20 for the liners. And then on top of that, I wore Marks as well, but it was a mitt versus a glove because if you have a glove, you spread your fingers, you don't keep the heat in. So if you do a mitt, fingers stay together and keep the heat in. So I did the liner glove with a mitt, and the mitt wasn't waterproof, unfortunately, but it did have a fold-over flap that I could then fully operate the camera. But after wearing them for a little while, I figured out they were thin enough that I was able to use the camera without having to open the mitt flap either.
Okay.
But Robert had posted it. Was Robert posted a really nice pair of gloves this week? Somebody posted.
Yeah. What do you use, Robert?
I just actually I've got a couple pairs of gloves. I've got windstopper gloves that I like when it's not too cold.
Yeah.
They're good for about down to about the freezing mark, which sometimes that's quite handy. Like it keeps the wind off them, and I think that's one of the important things too. And
Yeah.
I have a pair of heavier MEC mitts. I think these were about $30, and they have a fleece liner that comes out. So these are good for pretty cold temperatures. And within these, I would actually probably wear another liner if it was really
A
cold.
liner glove. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that you're going to find happens a lot is you need to take your gloves off. Cameras weren't designed to be operated on with heavy winter gloves. It's nearly impossible. One of the things I use, and again, I have these one-size-fits-all dollar store poly gloves. Now they're not good in the wind at all, so that's why you would spend more. But these are really affordable. I don't know if they're $1 or $2 or whatever, but I can have 3 or 4 pairs. So if you're prone to sweating and you need to switch out gloves a lot, these would be a great way to save from having to own 6 different pairs of gloves. But these are great as a liner. And then I use a pair of snowmobile gloves. If you're prone to cold, I strongly recommend mitts like Robert has. Your hands will stay much, much warmer. I'm pretty tolerant of cold and have great hand circulation, so I wear a glove just like that over top of that, and then I can operate my camera, but I can't operate my electronics. So having one of those fancy little liner gloves with the electronic finger and thumb is better. So again, what theme that you're going to recognize as we share with you guys is you see that we always have layers. There's always this underliner and then a kind of an insulated liner and then maybe something waterproof. And it's critical when you're going to be at different activity levels that you're at. Julie, you had a great coat last year too. Like when I look at the pictures again, you had that big red coat that.
Yeah, that was the Canadian Olympic coat actually that came out. It was down-filled coat. Really, really, really warm. It was a great coat. But
Yeah.
then I had 3 or 4 layers underneath that as well.
Yeah. And one of the only cautions about having a parka as your main overcoat is the fact that you do need to be able to ventilate or remove clothing as you go. Depending on how you've underlayered your parka, it might be a little overkill for most winter days, especially if you're moving around a lot. I was just gonna. I had a couple of things to screen share. For example, if you're Canadian, I'll just show this here. I'm going to screen share. This was the ice picks I showed you, and they're actually found in the fishing department. I looked all over the store for hours and finally found a pair in the fishing department. That was those ones. And rubber boots. I went on to Canadian Tire and they have a range of like 4- and 5-star boots. But the boots I'm talking about are kind of like they're right here, and they're a little different. Same boots. They're a little different now. This has been 10 or 15 years, but these are $44.95. They have almost a 5-star rating. They're rated to 40 below. They're not highly fashionable, but they're really, really effective. So you can spend, all kinds. And I just loaded up the ones that have like kind of extra height to them for water. But and MEC has different footwear too. So there's those. No, that was then there. The $44.95 is a minimum when you're looking at budget-wise. But you want to make sure at least from the ankle down is waterproof. It's so important having waterproof from the ankle down boots, because there's so often when you're out shooting, especially in the wilderness, that you're crossing a creek or an area, or you break through some morning ice and you land in a bit of water. Oh, our friend Jeff Moreau has joined us. Hello, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey there.
Jeff is the highest snowbank jumper I've ever met.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I had just shared the height of the snowbanks that we left behind us on the Bruce last year in January, and the extreme weather warning that was posted right after we got off.
Yeah. That was intense.
It was intense. It was a great trip. And so MEC, again, I did if you're Canadian, MEC is a great store. I think they have locations at least in Vancouver and Toronto. They do mail order, but they got fantastic outdoor gear, and you can go look up whatever you want by category, by height, by waterproofness, by rating, and you can find some great values on winter boots if you're.
You can spend a lot of money at Mac.
Yeah, that place. If you love the outdoors, that place is like crack. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. There's one in Burlington too. It's great.
Yeah. So I want to finish off just by talking really quickly about headgear, and I'll show you my really dumb winter hat. This one is not an expensive hat, but it keeps me so warm. I love it, and it looks really silly. But I'm going to put it on for you guys. Let me stop screen share. This thing's crazy. So don't laugh. It's one of these hats like this. I love this hat, and it does up on the bottom, and it has ear flaps, but most importantly, it just keeps everything really nice and warm. So I'm not afraid when I'm out with just a small group of people to look really, really silly. My daily wear hat, this is my little North Face hat. It's got a little fleece liner. There is a reason you spend more on North Face. It's not just for the name. I'm kind of really against brand names, but North Face over the years has made some really, really quality stuff, and they stand by it. They've replaced my winter shell twice after it started leaking, without question. And so it was worth the investment. But my regular hat is one like this, but it's not excellent in really extreme cold. It just works in average cold weather. Have a toque. There we go. And in lighter cold, I just have like fleece that goes around. But if you're in really cold weather, it's important to have not just a toque or a hat, but something that covers your face. Now, I'm not sure about you, Jeff, but I know, James, you had something. Do you have something too, Robert, that covers your face when you're out in extreme temperatures, a preferred way to do it?
I have a balaclava that's it's almost too warm only to wear like when it's really cold though. Like you say, like I have a light hat, like a running hat, and then a more insulated hat like your North Face. Mine's outdoor research, but like a good quality fleece hat, and
yeah,
you really notice the difference. The quality gear too, I find it's built to last. I have like my boots are 5 or 6 years old, or and my jacket, my shell is both the same too, and I've never had a problem with them. I spend a little more on them, but it is a quality investment that you'll have for quite a while.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'd like to point out about that is when you're in conditions that are not your usual conditions, like I had mentioned at the beginning, a minor slip or accident can turn into a major event if the only way to get to you is with a medevac helicopter. Having good gear could be the difference between life and death, and you don't have to spend $500 in a coat and $300 in a pair of boots, but you have to invest as much as your budget will allow on the best gear you can afford. So there are inexpensive alternatives, but just make sure that when you're going, especially in the winter, that you've spent what your budget will allow you to get gear that you can rely on and trust. Julie, do you have any favorite piece of equipment that's like, oh yeah, I can't go out in the winter without this one piece of equipment?
Oh, you guys already covered it. Socks is like my number one. I on the second day with you last March, I brought a pair of socks hiking socks that I thought were going to be fine, and I wore my one pair the one day, and I put on the different pair the second day, and within the first 15 minutes, I realized, oh, I just made a huge sock error, and it didn't ruin my day, obviously, but it made my day really, really uncomfortable for the rest of it. Yeah, it was just a huge mistake, and I remember saying, oh, this is gonna be brutal. But you touched on it too. Is a balaclava. What I have is I've got this hat on that I'm wearing now. It's a mech hat. It comes down pretty low. It covers my ears if I pull it all the way down. It's got a nice fleece on the inside here too. But I went to Canadian Tire on top of that and got a balaclava that comes down all the way around and over my shoulder, and I can pull it over the hat and cinch it as tight as I want to. And that's another thing to keep in mind when you're walking with a bunch of people, you're out with a bunch of people in the wintertime. Don't worry about what you look like. Seriously, I'm sure everybody was giggling at me with my whole, nobody could recognize me really at one point because when we were heading back across the lake, head down, wind in our faces, nobody's looking at you. You're just trying to be.
Nobody.
You
just want to be warm.
Yeah.
I got this. I'll just point out. I've got this one here, which is my severe weather one, and it's kind of hard to put on, but it's got an inner hat and an outer hat. And when I'm all bundled in, I'm not going to show you, but when I'm all bundled into it, it goes below my coat like a bib, and I have an inner hat that actually comes around my nose here, and an outer hat that covers to here, so all you see is my eyes. And that's my extreme cold one. And because it's fleece, I still need the overhood and I have my shell here. And I'm going to go on to that, talking about a shell now. So I have this 4-season weight shell. It's actually a mountain climbing, like a summit series. I think it's North Face, and it's below the waist. I don't use a jacket bomber style. I use one that's a little longer, so at least it covers a bit of my butt. And the shell is waterproof. It's the most important thing to be waterproof and breathable. Whether you buy North Face or Misty Mountain or some other brand name, a waterproof, breathable shell, starting from the outside. And we'll go to the inside. I don't know if I saved. I saved a bunch of pins, but don't have my Pinterest open, so I won't even show it. And so I'll just share a screen share. Just a quick view here of different shells. This was just a quick search on Google showing shells. And so the shell's purpose is not to insulate. The shell's purpose is for wind, rain, and snow, to hold in the insulation on the layers that you wear below it. So what I do is I have like poly underwear, and I want to mention that cotton is probably the worst choice for your first layer. So we're going to work from the inside out for a second. And your first layer, like I'm wearing here, a poly under layer for winter clothing. Long johns and top, and that wicks moisture away from your body. Even if they get wet, they don't hold the moisture, and they'll wick it out further. And by wicking, I'll explain in a second. The next layer or layers that you want to have on are any combination of sweaters or light jackets or heavier jackets that are fleece or wool or poly cotton blends. It's okay once you get to the outer layers to have a bit of cotton in the blend. That's not a big deal. But not to have that cotton layer right against your skin. Have that poly layer against your skin. And then your outer shell, your layers depend on how warm they are, how big of sweaters you wear. It's just entirely depending on the conditions you're going into. So if you're going into really cold conditions, you might want to have some heavy wool sweater and then even a fleece jacket over that before your shell. I did save I hope I have it loaded. I don't. Oh, I should open the Pinterest, but oh well. Somebody had shown Oh, Jeff, I'm going to put that front and center. There's how you dress for the winter. You don't see the red spot on my nose, so I must have touched my camera just after that. But there's Jeff's frozen hair. It's sticking out in front there. That's great, Jeff. So there we are. It was. I think it was below -25 right at that point. That was just before we left.
I think with wind chill, they were saying it was -40 to -50 at that point.
Yeah. It was cold, man. Yeah, and the lake there wasn't completely frozen, so there was ice mist blowing off of the lake. It was that fog you see is actually ice crystal mist. But that's so, Jeff. I just want to ask you, now that you've joined, you were with me in January. You were on the coldest trip of the year.
All right.
Yeah, it didn't get colder than that. It didn't get colder than that evening when we shot those pictures. So you were pretty prepared, but I think hand warmers saved the day, especially in regard to footwear, right?
Oh yeah, for me, I was big on them, and I even actually, and I should be fine with it, but for Christmas, I requested. I saw on Amazon that they had 40 packs of those hot hand warmers for $25. So, I mean that's. I like to put one in each of my gloves, and I'll put 2 pairs of socks on and put them in between the socks there, and for me that is. It's a cheap fix, but boy, does it make a huge difference that I loved a lot. And when we were on our way up, we found those things for, I don't know, $3 to $5 per pack.
Yeah, so we were in a position of supply and demand. They're not usually that expensive, but they were sold out everywhere.
Yeah.
But we just bought what we could buy.
Yeah, but I loved those things. They were great for the conditions we saw. It was really helpful for me.
Yeah, good. And now, just to let people know, for those that don't, I mean, everybody does know you, Jeff, because you're the guy with you can jump. Yeah, you got great images.
Thank you.
Yeah, you love science.
I do love science.
Yeah, and you love the outdoors. I was so glad that you came up you're from Pennsylvania, right?
You got it.
Yeah, so from Pennsylvania, and that trip was one of the colder ones you've experienced.
You could say that. that was a little colder than Pennsylvania is accustomed to. But I was really fortunate that I had somebody who had good snowshoes that I could use. The rest of the year I had, but I had somebody who had good snowshoes they could loan me, and I had ice crampons. But there was 2 feet of snow everywhere. I didn't need my ice crampons, but I was ready for them with them at least.
Yeah. Sorry, just glancing over there. I do have something. I just want to show you something that the last thing I want to talk about is snowshoes or ice crampons. And you can see behind me, this is a typical pair. These are a little older, and like the ones up there, I have some atlases of snowshoes. And today's snowshoes, you don't have to spend a fortune. I think I got these for $50 to $80 on Kijiji, like our local, kind of buy and sell. And I happened to find these. Lady was selling them, and they'd only used them a couple of times, and I went down and I picked them up, and that was a pretty good value. And this is what I mean when they strap onto the back of your boot. They have to, that little nub that's on the boot helps hold them up. So that's really good. Some of the newer ones, like James and Robert, that you likely have a much more advanced system. I don't know what they call this system, but if you want to hold that up and show us, I'll highlight you there, Robert. There's Robert's. Now he has a pretty much slip-on system with the fast release. And again, with snowshoes, you get what you pay for. And so if you're able to upgrade to a pair like these MSRs, these are what are known as kind of all-terrain snowshoes. They're unibody, aren't they? Like they're yeah, they're rigid like James's, and they have an almost step-into boot harness, which is really, when you got big gloves on, I'm telling you, these things make all the difference in the world, having the more advanced harness system. So thanks. And James, you had a pair of kind of all-terrain composite snowshoes. Do you have them there to show, or I know you're going to put links up for us?
So I have them with me, but they're very similar to Robert's. The bindings are just one generation earlier. Robert, the ones I have, mine had heel lifts. The current generation of the MSR Evo, which is their economical pair, does not have heel lifts. Heel lifts are little bars that come up, and if you're on an incline, they save your calves and your feet if you're walking up an incline, because they basically get a little bit of lift where your foot stops down.
Yeah.
But the ones that Robert got now is the ones I'd buy without hesitation if the bindings are as good as they look. They're about $190 plus tax, I believe.
Yeah, I'm actually going to screen share to everyone here for now, present to everyone. And I believe, Jay, you're thinking of the MSR Revo ones?
Yeah, they're either the 22 or 25. Revos are the ones, yeah, the Revos.
Yeah. And so the 25s, which are pretty average for a normal sized guy, I have 25s and I have 30s. Depends if I'm backpacking or not. If I'm backpacking, I go to a larger snowshoe, and it keeps me, especially in lighter snow. But 25s are pretty standard for the average person.
The
That's
Evos,
in inches.
the other advantage of the MSR series is they have optional tails. So if you get into powder, you add the optional tails, and you're staying on top.
Yeah, and I did notice that MSR now sells them as an add-on, so you can get add-ons for the tails. So, and these are all 5-star rated. And so this is the composite style that those guys are showing, and I highly, highly recommend them as an all-terrain snowshoe. But like I say, you can go on Kijiji and you can get a pretty decent used pair of current snowshoes for a pretty good value. I think the Atlas ones behind me were about $300, whereas I picked up these ones, which would retail for about $200, and I got them for somewhere between $50 and $80. Now, Julie, you're very fortunate. You were able to borrow a pair last year?
I think you had an extra pair.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you were wearing the tubs last year. So yeah,
yes.
they worked out well for you. And Jeff, it was you that borrowed a pair.
I borrowed a pair from a friend who'd taken them up Mount Whitney or something before. That he was a big mountaineer person, and he had them laying around.
Yeah. And so if you're going into anywhere where there's going to be a combination of snow, ice, water, and different depths, if you're only bringing one thing, I would bring snowshoes. Ice crampons are a great thing to have. I have these. Now these are a poor man's ice crampon. They're not terribly expensive, and they go over my boots. But you'll see that I have a string. And these aren't very safe when you're on a grade. If you're going downhill, they tend to pull off, and they can be lost in deep snow. And I actually ended up tying a string around them so that I could tie them around the front of my boot so that if they slipped off, I wouldn't lose them. And so that could be a safety issue. And I don't have a pair of the very good crampons, but don't cheap out if you want crampons.
Do you want me to grab the pair I have?
Yeah, that'd be great, Jeff.
I'll be back.
Robert has a pair too, so I'll highlight Robert first. And so these are a pair of ice crampons that you can walk on icy conditions with, and that's when you don't have deep snow. And highly recommended on the Georgian Bay coast. If you only have one thing, snowshoes will do the trick, but make moving around the rocks more difficult. Whereas if you can switch over to just the ice crampons, it makes it an amazing pleasure. And just don't go cheap on those. Like I say, the slip-on ones can slip off, and if they slip off, so do you.
Again, I think I got these at MEC. I haven't tried them yet. I got these today. They were about $70, I think, $75.
Yeah, and I think mine were about $30 for the more heavy-duty rubber slip-on ones.
I need some of those for the city.
Yeah, they do work good in the city. They work great on sidewalks. They work good, but they're not good on inclines. And yeah, you don't want them on inclines. Just closing my links that I've already shared. There. Okay, Jeff, I got you highlighted. And so here's the ones Jeff has.
These are serious ones here that are, yeah, they've got all these, it's adjustable, and they're coated in nice steel spikes. I'm taking the rubber off of it here.
Yeah.
But you attach them onto your shoe, put your shoe right in it, strap them over the top, and yeah, I haven't had extreme conditions. We were, as I said, we had like 2 feet of snow last year, so we didn't need these so much. But if you wanted some good grip on some ice, this is about as good as you're going to get, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And there's different grades of those that you can get, but the very inexpensive slip-on ones avoid at all costs. They're more dangerous than they are safe. The mid-range heavy-duty slip-on ones are great if you're not on inclines. If you are on inclines, you're going to want to tie a string around them. And snowshoes are your real true all-terrain vehicle. You know, the 25-inch snowshoe is an average. If you're smaller, you want a smaller pair. If you're bigger, you want a bigger pair, but the 25-inch is great. I think we've pretty much covered the gamut of clothing. One thing I want to talk about is in the idea, before we close out, of making sure in cold temperatures that you have enough batteries and that you're keeping them warm. So Jeff, you brought some phenomenal cameras with you last year. Like, holy crap! You were the first person I shot with that shot with the new Sony line, the A7 and A7R.
Well, no, I shot with the A77. I didn't have the yeah.
Oh, so you're on a small, and I was blown away by the durability and the picture quality at that point. So yeah, the one downfall though was your battery consumption was quite a bit more.
It was a lot, but you gave me the advice, especially after the first day, of keeping them warm and keeping them on my body there, and that made a real big difference as far as the temperature of them and where they worked. Keeping the camera on a little bit more so and keeping them warm made a huge difference. But yeah, my camera's actually it's the same sensor as the A7R, but it's the, I guess, 3-year-old now A77, so it's the full big size one there, but just the same Sony line it's at. Yeah,
it just blew me out of the water. I just loved the versatility of it, and I was concerned about how it would perform, and it performed fine. The LCD was a little sluggish, but the camera performed well. Yeah, so so bring extra batteries. If I'm going out for the day, I'll have 3 batteries, and generally one will last. If it's not extremely cold, if it drops to below -20, they really degrade quickly. And so I have elasticed in the past a pocket warmer right over the battery of the grip of my Nikon. And once that's there, it not only keeps your hand warm, it keeps the battery compartment a little warmer as well. Now, the enemy of a camera and a lens in extreme cold conditions is not the cold. It's going back into the warm. And when you go back into the warm, the best thing you can do is put it in your bag and not open it up quickly, not pull it out right away, or it'll fog up. Now, doing that once or twice isn't going to hurt, but if you do it a lot, moisture can get into your camera and begin to corrode your electronics. And worse than that, moisture can get into your lens, and you'll get something known as internal mold. Mold can grow on the inside of your lens and will appear as tiny black spots. And so the couple of tricks that are really great, and one that James does, is bring the big heavy-duty Ziploc freezer bag. And before you go inside, put your camera in, zip it up, and let it warm up. And when it's warm, you can take it out, no problem with condensation. There's no issue going from warm to cold. It doesn't cause a condensation issue, although you may get a bit of frosting. It goes away or out of the camera, not into it. The issue is when you go inside from extreme cold into humid conditions, the humidity can seep inside your camera and inside your lens, and if you do that over a prolonged period of time, it will damage it. So it's good to keep it in the bag while the bag warms up slowly, or put it into a Ziploc. If you have to go in and out, like I go to the zoo, I carry 2 cameras, so I don't have to change lenses in extreme conditions. So I have 2 cameras, each one with a different lens. One's inside my coat, one's outside my coat. If I go inside, like to a pavilion at the zoo or something, I'll throw the cold one in my backpack and take out the one that's inside my coat when I go inside, because it's already warm and humid. So that's just another trick. Anyway, I was having trouble keeping an eye on the chat. Bill said, "Darn, I missed the show. Leather flask with brandy to keep you warm. That's a good plan." That's also very safe, Bill. It's recorded, so we're just about to close it off, but you can watch the replay. When is the next Jeff photo walk? Jeff, that's a good question. We're planning to go away together on the 1st of January.
Correct.
And we have a small crew going with us this time. People have,
Yeah.
they said they're really excited about it. And so we have a small crew going with you. We don't want a huge crew, but we could probably take 1 or 2 more people if they show an interest. But what do you think about the photo walk? Like, when are you coming? You have to leave on the 4th.
I have to be, I teach again on that Monday. So I need to be, like, on the road the day before in the morning to make sure I can get back in time.
And so we want to have time between when you get here, time for a trip up north, and time for a Toronto photo walk. That would be ideal.
I got time for it. Yeah, I'll be heading up. I'll be doing the big trip on the 31st, and then I'll be ready to do anything by the next morning. So.
Great. So yeah, if we did a trip on the 1st and 2nd and a photo walk on the 3rd,
I can
Keep
do.
everybody posted. Keep us posted.
Yeah.
Works for me.
Mine's not updating as quickly as yours. But yeah, we could do it that way, or we could do because we already started people with the idea you would be going away on the 1st. So 1st and 2nd away and a 3rd a photo walk, if that works.
Sure.
Yeah. I would love to do the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd away if the weather was awesome, but then you can't do the photo walk at the same time.
Unless we came back for an evening photo walk that day or something.
Well, that's true. If we came back on the 1st after our morning shoot, we'd get back into the city in the afternoon and it'd be fine. We'll have to talk about it, but
sure.
So we don't go too much over. We won't be going. It'll be just about an hour. I'd like to stop the broadcast now, and if you want to hang out with us for a little bit, I'm going to hang out for a little while. Just mention it. I'll send you a hangout through the chat. We have room for a few people still. But thanks for joining us, and there's going to be posts in the comments to links about the equipment we discussed. So if you go to the event page, go into the comments and scroll down, the links are going to be there, right, hot linked right in the comments. So thanks for joining us.